Welcome back, and thanking you for staying with us on Morning Express. Of course, you like to call it the weekend edition of Morning Express. This morning, we are going to be looking at the education sector, like I earlier said. Now, the federal government has imposed a 7-year moratorium on establishment of new federal universities, polytechnics, and of course colleges of education. And I cited proliferation of underutilized institutions, overstretched resources, and a drop in academic quality. Now, this decision was approved on Wednesday at the Federal Executive Council meeting, presided over by the President himself, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, at the Presidential Villa. Now, after the meeting, the Minister of Education, Dr. Tunji Alausa, mentioned that this was the conclusion from the meeting. Now, this decision has actually brought mixed reactions, of course, from the public. And this morning, we're going to be looking at Nigeria's tertiary education reset, of course, the reforms and the realities. To join me on the show this morning, I've got two amazing academia, educationists, if you like to call them scholars, if you like to call them that way too. I have Professor James Agajo. He's a distinguished scholar and academic leader, currently serving as a professor at the Federal University of Technology, Minna. Of course, you're welcome to the show, Professor James. And I also have with me in the studio an associate professor and Deputy Dean of Faculty of Management and Social Sciences, Cosmopolitan University, Abuja. I'm talking about no other person than Dr. Suleiman Barnabas. Good morning to you and welcome.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
I'd like to start with you. Of course, it was a double-edged sword. 7 years moratorium on universities. At the same time, 9 private universities were approved by FEC. When you got this news, what was your thought?
Well, I wasn't surprised because the reality is that the rate at which federal universities or federal institutions generally, are coming up, without commensurate, manpower and development or even provision to ensure that these universities are manned by competent professors and lecturers, calls for concern. I mean, when establishment of university, has become the what you call the constituency projects of House of Rep members, senators, it's a worrying situation. As we speak, there are about over 200 applications from senators and House of Rep members to establish federal universities. They consider that as part of their constituency project now. So that is a problem. I think it's the right decision by the federal government.
I can see, Professor James, you've been nodding your head. Let's also add to the concerns of the minister about, I think last week, the rector of Kebbi Polytechnic lamented that even with the fact that they've had more accredited courses, they do not have students to take this course. And we also heard the minister mention, in fact, he mentioned a particular case where there are just 800 students and about 1,200 staff to attend to the students. So what were your thoughts, on this matter?
Okay, thank you once again for having me. It's been a thing of concern for me, and presently I think it's a hot topic, and I want to appreciate the president for taking this bold step towards this issue, because if this thing is not checked, it's going to make our situation laughable. It's quite unfortunate that education we see as a tool is now being branding it as maybe an ordinary venture that probably should not be taken the way we used to take it before. Back to what you say. In recent time, what That's what you saw me nodding my head a couple of while ago. In recent time, politicians have taken establishment of academic institution has a way to politicize their seats. One, education or institution personally is usually seen as a business you can establish in an environment that will be very, very loud. But not just establishing institutions. What is it you have? I bring this to the forefront of the National University Commission because I've been a resource person at different points in time. We're not going to talk about the proliferation of institutions without talking about the regulators. Yes, when I heard of it yesterday, I knew, yes, we're not mentioning where the source of the problem is. Now, coming to the issue of the Kebbi State Polytechnic you mentioned a while ago. You see, this is a capitalist environment, and in the capitalist environment, you talk about profit margin is profit driven. Let me put it that way. Profit driven. You establish courses in areas based on what their peculiarities. For instance, I cannot be establishing University of Maritime in a desert. Are you getting me? Because if you do that, you probably satisfying the interest of one person, not the interest of so many persons. So aside, you're probably not going to get enough application in that area, and so on. So likewise, establishing courses in areas where the peculiarities are not defined there, you're probably going to get very few application. Now you go to universities today, you see some departments not having one or two students. I'm talking about the federal institutions. The private institutions are better off because to a certain extent it's profit driven, so they go out for courses they feel will actually attract students. You understand? But in the government-owned institutions, they could establish courses not minding the peculiarity of the environment, and at the end of the day, it becomes a wasteful venture. So you see students not coming because it's not actually capturing what they want. That is one. Then two, the establishment of institutions within a particular area has to do with the demography. You could have areas where you have probably much more population, and this population requires that, yes, you have more institution. But a place where you have sparse population, you establishing universities without carry out some considerable measurement actually pose a problem. So you begin to suffer this where you have the number of staffs far more than the number of students. So the NUC, again, I take it back to them, that's the National University Commission, has a responsibility. As much as we're talking about provision of universities around Nigeria, we should equally remember that the regulator has a very, very big role to play. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And that leads me to the next question that I'm going to be asking, and that's the matter of quality and quantity. Nigeria, we know we have a large population, tending towards 230 million people, and of course we know that the largest size of this population are youth, and they need to be educated. But some people have argued that we do not need so many universities to attend to this people. What's your thought on this?
I want to bring the Chinese model when it comes to establishment of universities. There's this mismatch that we actually suffer, and there's supposed to be a plan on the ground. You're not just establishing universities for the sake of establishing them alone, but you're establishing universities for the mere fact that there is a plan, and the plan is this: that when these students are admitted, we are expecting so number of graduates at so point in time. Then they'll be going out to the wider world, which is the society, So what is it the government has on ground to match? That's why I said. That's why I said I talked about mismatch in this. So we're establishing institutions, but we're not talking about industries. We're not talking about making the environment open for investors that will require or we need the services of these graduates. So it's very, very important we talk about how to match the size, the number with what is outside. So that mismatch. So the Chinese model has it back that they want more graduates. Why? Because they have enough outside waiting for them to employ them. In the year 2010 or thereabout, 2010, 2009, if my memory serves me right, I heard that number of engineering students in China that year alone that graduated for just one particular year was close to 1 million, just engineering. And they said they needed more. Why? Because the Chinese model has it this way, that money is never kept in a safe, but money is meant to be used for the purpose of achieving one or two goals. So what they do is that when you graduate, please, there's something on ground for you substantive that you can come and think about way of government loans, go and establish businesses and probably advance your thoughts, the skill you've acquired. So if you try that on close to 1 million students, I can bet you in the next 20 years you'll be seeing some big tech entrepreneurs coming out of them. So you can see that match. But in our own case here, there is no plan. There's no plan. So I will actually advise government to talk about this plan. So as you coming up with this moratorium, yes, really this will be a leeway, as in the time for you to play around with and say, okay, let's put everything right. There's this problem of mismatch in the two. What is it we have around? Because we just turning out graduates and nowhere to go for them. It's not as I'm not saying government should come and employ graduates. No. Just create an environment that will make them strive, that will make them survive, that will make them advance their skills. So what do you have outside? What are you going to make available outside for these students to, when they graduate, they know that yes, there are opportunities here. Let me tell you one truth about Nigerians. Nigerians are very resilient people, to be frank. We're very resilient people. Just give us the opportunities to survive. Taking a cue from the Jackpot syndrome, Nigerians, our fellow youngsters and what have you, travel abroad. When they get abroad, it's not as if they have parents there. Some of them use their own God-given skill to see how much they could pick up jobs and skills and advance their thoughts. And you see them surviving. Then how much more in their own country? So there's need for government to do more. And there should be a national plan in this direction.
Now, Dr. Barnabas, I know you have so much to say, but let's look at curriculum, just in line with what Professor James has said. There are some disturbing facts about the fact that it doesn't seem as though our curriculum is tilted in the direction of world-class standards, especially with what is happening in the world at the moment. There are talks about the fact that it doesn't seem as though our graduates are industry ready, and just opposing that with unemployment rate in the country at the moment. What do you have to say about this?
Well, I do not think that the problems are essentially with our curriculum. I mean, we have, because just like we say, generally in our society, the Nigerian society, it's not a problem of policy. It's not a problem of documents existing. It's about implementation. So we have good, the curriculum is okay. What Prof has said maybe should be what we'll be thinking about. How industries are created so that our graduates are gainfully employed. In fact, some time ago, we introduced, as the Nigerian educational system, introduced entrepreneurship, as a compulsory course. And that has helped. When I was a lecturer with Covenant University, I had this student, Dixon Nsofo, the founder of Korape. He's a multi-billionaire today. Korape has, offices across the continent, in the US, in the Canada, UK. The headquarters is in Nigeria. A young man, doing very well. So what we need to do is how we can have quality education. And quality education here is not about the university, but primary and secondary schools, so that the people who are gaining admission into our universities will be people who can actually acquire, the required skills, knowledge, so that they can become solution providers. What we have currently is that people get into the university just so as to have the certificate, and then use the certificate to get job using connections and all. So when you have this kind of system, it will affect productivity. But to say that our curriculum is a problem, I do not think that the curriculum is a problem. Our quality of education, particularly at the primary and secondary school levels, need to increase, so that we have people who we can actually rely on to have, at the end of it all, acquire the required skill, knowledge, and then become solution providers in our society.
Now, in the news this morning, we heard that the federal government is doling out some loan funds to tertiary institution workers, and let's juxtapose this with the fact that even the minister mentioned the fact that it is as though we have, in some institutions, we have more staff than the student. How do we put all this together? And also the fact that, also in the news this morning, ASUP is planning to go on strike. ASU is always at the verge of every strike. And the challenge has always been welfareism. So how do we put all this together?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about, the concerns of Nigerian professors, lecturers, probably some of the most underpaid in the world. Go to Ghana, Sierra Leone. These are countries that don't have the kind of resources that Nigeria has. So that it's not a problem of resources, it's a problem of priority. It's a problem of values. What kind of values you place on your education? That is where our leaders are produced. That is where our industrialists are made. So how do you take their welfare for granted, and leading to this kind of brain drain that we have in our societies today? So it's unfortunate that has happened, and I think that some of the agreements that federal government has actually signed with ASU, they need to implement them. If those agreements are implemented, I think that to a large extent that problem of welfareism would have been solved, because you have lecturers that are very, very sacrifice minded. Nigerian lecturers, probably the most patient you can have, resourceful to the extent when you compare it with the facilities at their disposal, a lot of patriotism there, and that we must commend. Now, coming to the idea of that you have 800 students, in some universities, federal universities. Now, I think that what is responsible for that is security. I can tell you, I don't have the information as to what university the minister was talking about, but I can tell you that university will be in a place where there are security issues.
So how come we now have more students than we have less students than staff?
I'm telling you, staff, you go there for survival, to be paid. And if you do proper audit, you'll find out that most of those staff, they don't even stay in those areas. Some of them are in Abuja, in the state capitals of those places where you have those universities, and then once in a while they show up and escape from there. I'll tell you a story. 2022, I wanted to go to Federal University, Gusau. I met with the Vice Chancellor. He wanted me to come over, and that was my plan. And then that hotel lost his brother, and the son-in-law, Captain Jamil Abubakar, happens to be my friend. So I went there with him to go and pay condolence visit. And then in the course of conversation, Jamil told Dangote that Prof is leaving for Gusau, and Dangote said, at this time, Suleiman, don't go there yet. And I didn't go. But shortly after that time, that was when the bandits invaded the Federal University in Gusau. So, how many parents are willing? Look at what happens. Just to go and do NYSC. Once you post some of them to those places, they refuse going. And so, with better alternatives in terms of universities proliferated everywhere, why would you want to send your child to Federal University, Dusima, where you know that every day, even a general was kidnapped in that environment? Or you want to send them to Federal Daura alone, how many universities? So these are issues. Government must remove politics from education. In those days, ABU, people were coming from Lagos, you wouldn't even know that this school is located in the north, because the people you find there, if you get to Zaria, you see people speaking Yoruba, speaking Igala, speaking Idoma, and all kinds of languages there. So we must, put policies in place that reflect on the basis of what the data is saying. As it is today, proliferation of universities, establishing universities is not what we need. Look at these politicians. Each time they are giving this account of their performances, they say I established social universities, social polytechnics and all. There's no follow-up on whether they are performing. There's productivity. People, how shameful it is that 34 federal institutions never had a single application in the last JAM listen. So that's problematic. And the government, and I need to commend this minister, is making the right decision. That has to be done. Now you are talking about private universities. That why are they? There are two different things. Like Prof, talked about. We're not saying that the universities are too many. That's not what we're saying. The truth is that the universities we have currently cannot even meet the demand of student enrollment.
Totally, or private universities?
Totally. I mean, if you we have 230 million.
230 million.
No, I'm even talking about the number of JAM
applicants.
Okay, all right. In the last 2025 application,
yeah.
2,30,627. That was the figure they gave. Now, if you divide that by 275 universities that we have, you will see that it's not. It kind of, and of course, some of the universities don't have some of the courses that they want to do, and all. So it's not about that the universities are too many. It's the fact that the universities are not funded. You have a professor who is teaching in 5 universities across maybe 3 geopolitical zones, because accreditation is needed. And so like Prof has said, the regulators need to do something there. You go to Kogi State, for instance. The state government has established 3 state universities. To pay salaries of civil servants is a problem in that state. So why are you doing that? There are 3 senatorial districts in the state. And so you must have in all of this thing. We're not talking about the federal polytechnics. We're not talking about the federal university that they have, and another university has been approved. Federal university has been approved again. So when decisions are made not on the basis of logic, not on the basis of data, not on the basis of knowledge, but on parochial, sentimental reasons, then you have this kind of issues that we have at hand. And so it's right that the federal government has made this. I believe that after the expiration of the 7 years, the next government will also extend it. Because what we need now, in Daura alone, you have 2 or 3 universities.
So you're calling for extension.
There will be extension.
All right, we will still get into the conversation. We still have so much, but let's go right now to bring you the minister's speech. Of course, is addressed to the State House correspondents after the Federal Executive Council meeting that was held on Wednesday. When we come back, we'll take you on more issues concerning Nigerian tertiary institutions, reform and reality.
Our chairman, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, we approved a 7-year moratorium on establishment of new federal tertiary educational institutions all across the country. Tertiary institutions, universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education. 7-year moratorium on establishment of any of these institutions. And let me give the members of the press and the entire country the full perspective and the context behind this memo going to the Federal Executive Council. Today, in our country, access to tertiary education is no longer an issue. What we have now is duplication of new federal tertiary institutions. And what we're seeing is significant reduction in the carrying capacity of each of these institutions, tertiary institutions, universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education. Now, we're witnessing significant deterioration of infrastructures, both physical and manpower, at these federal tertiary institutions. So, and if we do not act decisively, we'll have significant reduction in the quality of graduates coming out of these institutions, which will impact a global rating and the respect that the international community has for the graduates, for the people graduating from our universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education. And if we don't act decisively as well, the unemployment rate will worsen because hundreds of thousands of these graduates will not have life skills at all, which will eventually lead to significant reduction in our human capital index. Let me give you some data as well. Today, we have 72 public federal universities and about 108 state universities, as well as 159 private universities. For polytechnics, we have 42 public polytechnics, federal polytechnics, 98 state polytechnics, and 91 private polytechnics. For colleges of education, we have 28 federal colleges of education, 68 state colleges of education, and 152 private colleges of education. In areas of allied institutions that we used to call monotechnics, we have 42 public allied institutions and 54 private, giving a total of 98. We have 31 public colleges of agric and 1 private. Combined between colleges of health sciences and nursing, we have 158 public and 120 private of such institutions, which gives a total of 278 colleges of health sciences and nursing. For innovation enterprise institutions, which are also degree awarding, we have 16 public and 165 private, giving a total of 181 of such institutions. Now, this is what we're seeing when I say access is no longer an issue. This 2024, 2025, 2026 academic session, about 2.1 million young Nigerians applied to JAM to go to any of our tertiary institutions, universities, polytechnics, colleges of education, colleges of agric, colleges of nursing and health sciences, as well as Innovation Enterprise Institute. The shocking data that we're seeing today, we have 199 universities that less than 99 candidates apply to seek to go to those universities. In fact, 0 candidates applied through JAM to go to 34 universities. Collectively, between 0 to 99, universities that had less than 100 candidates applying, 199. For polytechnics, we had 295 polytechnics, federal, state, and private, that had less than 99 people applying, choosing them as a choice for candidates to go there. For colleges of education, we had 219 colleges of education, federal, state, and private, that had less than 99 candidates choosing them via the JAM portal. In fact, 64 colleges of education had 0 candidates choosing them. So if we want to improve the quality of our tertiary institution and not be a laughing stock across the world, the FEC decision today is the most pragmatic and the best for our educational system, for our tertiary educational system, so that we can sustain the respect that the world has for us. We can now begin to mobilize resources to improve infrastructures, both manpower and physical infrastructures, in the current institutions that we have as a federal government. If we do this, we'll also expand, we'll be able to improve quality of education, and more importantly, increase the carrying capacities of these universities, of these called polytechnics and colleges of education. There's several of our universities in some northern region, and I will tell you that I can count 10 for you. But let me give you a specific example of one university in one of the regions of the country. They had less than 800 students, and they have staff strength of 1,200 staffs for 800 students. And this is the commonality in our federal institutions. Several federal universities, federal universities today, have less than 2,000 students. So it's just a waste of government resources. We have to decisively move to do what we've done today. And I want to thank our President, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who believes so much fervently and benevolently in education. And his mandate to us is that we should ensure that every single Nigerian get the highest quality of education that is comparable to anywhere in the world. And the President has met his mandate with commitment, significant political will and commitment in supporting the education sector. And I want to publicly thank Mr. President again for all his support to the education sector. So that's that on the approval of the 7-year moratorium for establishment of new federal tertiary institutions. Also today, the Federal Executive Council approved establishment of 9 private universities. And you would say, oh, the Minister of Education is talking with the 2 sides of his mouth. Yes, but let me clarify that for you. The reason for that, and that's why I chose to talk to that myself, several of the applications today, they've been in the docket of the National University Commission for over 6 years. So they're pre-existing applications, and they've gone through slow processes. We're reforming the way Nigeria University Commission works, because it's been so inefficient before. Universities will have their pre-application, they'll submit the application, and then they'll go first visitation and second visitation. We will form the guidelines, and we've put timelines. But several of these universities, and I'll give you the numbers, they've gone through several of these processes. They've made significant improvement. In fact, by the time myself and Honorable Minister of State for Education, Professor Suleiman Said Ahmad, assumed the responsibility of leading the Ministry of Education, there were about 551 applications for private universities waiting. Several of those applications have been there for over 5 years. So what we did quickly, we brought new guidelines, and we made almost 351 of such applications inactive. And as we did that, making them inactive, we created new guidelines regarding the timing and the requirement. So what we have today, we have about 79 active private universities application. Of the 79, we've just approved 9 today. But with the new stringent guidelines that we've created, we don't expect up to 20 of such applications to come for FEC approval. So when you see in the succeeding months that we come, I go to FEC to approve private universities. These were applications that had been there for years. They've invested money, they've built campuses, they've built structures, but what happened before was the inefficiencies of National University Commission in getting these universities visited and getting them approved. But we have to be kind and fair to these investors. They've spent billions of naira building these infrastructures. So it's not fair to penalize them because of inefficiencies of National University Commission. So that was why those applications are going to come, but it doesn't impact the FEC approval today of moratorium on new federal universities. And when we zoom at the Ministry of Education as well, we quickly put moratorium on establishment of private universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education.
I'd like to start with you, Professor James. What you have to say about, what the minister has just spelled out in that?
Yes, quite awesome that we taking very serious stance in looking at improving our educational system so we get quality education. And in all of this he's been saying is quite apt that if some of these steps are not taken, it becomes difficult much later. This position taken, I can tell you for free that is stepping on so many toes. So that's why I commend the government. So many tools, because there are so many interests in this area. There's interests who are looking up to their plan, because even some politicians see establishment of academic institutions like the university has retirement benefits to sustain their livelihood by way of making more money, but not thinking about the quality. Now, for coming out to stand this ground, it's a good thing. The other time I said I was going to comment on the issue of government loan for
tertiary
institution. It's very, very important. My colleague did talk about it. Let me corroborate what he said. These 7 years to me, moratorium should serve as a period for the federal government to have this sigh of relief at attending to most of the concerns raised before, especially ASU and other members of the public. How do you improve the welfare of staffs? Nigerian professors, if you quote me wrong, but this is the information we have handy, about the least paid professors in the world. And seeing them still taking up this job shows to some extent an issue of maybe wanting to serve, patriotism, but it's very, very unfortunate to get to see a professor telling you that he's only here because he has no option. He's not good at all. And if you am here, when I know there are other options, that's to tell you that this environment is good for me to a great extent. But when you see people in the university and they're telling you they are here because we don't have other options, but that is what I think is resonating with most of our academic staffs. So by so doing, morale is low. The ability to give out or dish out is equally very, very low. So if these 7 years could be used by federal government to improve on the welfare of staff, it will go a long way. The aspect of loan, I don't see that loan a good replacement for the request that has been presented to government long before now by ASU, and which is still ongoing. All of these arrangements for loan, and please visit some of these areas and attend to them. And I tell you that the university will be a good place to show to showcase that Nigeria is among the best. Today, when you go abroad, you see people, see, there's a thin line between what you probably envy outside and this way. Here you have the manpower. A professor is not being respected here. The moment he leaves the shores of this country, you see them making exploits. You hardly hear a professor underperforming when he's outside. But why is it when we're in our environment, you don't even have the right tools to work with? Then somebody tells you our professors are not working. No, it's not so. So please, I really urge the government to do the needful at this point in time and seeing that they attend to most of these problems. So the 7 years should be very strategic. There should be strategic plan, not just giving out 7 years. There should be strategic plan. Then I want to say this thing. We've been talking about government-owned institutions. Let's go to the private institutions too. This one must say for free too, that there are people who ordinarily love to venture into the business of academics and establishing private institutions, which is very good. Like my colleague said the other time, that these universities are actually not too much for us, going by our population, going by the JAM application. But there's this mismatch we need to work on. Now, the private institution, and I have NUC, once again, National University Commission, to hold on to. Please, let's not in any way compromise standards when it comes to resource verification and accreditation. But it starts from there. Insist on the requirement. You see, it's not easy to be a regulator in Nigeria, to be frank. Let me not be just be on one side.
At least now you're trying to pass the child out.
No. But I'm not put it to them. Let me not just be one side. It's not easy to be a regulator in Nigeria. But if you're a regulator, you have higher powers with interest, and you tell them that if I'm a ruling party chairman now and I want to establish my university, are you telling me I'm below par? Then you know the impression that in another position of yours as the head of that regulating, you'll be on a hot seat. So sometimes you them to go probably play around, and playing around standards are. There are private institutions that don't actually have permanent staffs. All they do is to look for temporary staff because it is cheaper for them. While using that opportunity to provide job for our youngsters, they probably have 1 or 2, 3 few permanent staffs, and the rest will be just visiting or part-time and so on. So they should ensure that yes, the percentage, certainly there's no way you won't have visiting, but that percentage or ratio should be adhered to a great extent. So I actually is a holistic thing. That of the government-owned institution is really very practicable. We're seeing it. Then equally the private institution is equally a thing to work on to, all put together towards achieving the best.
Now let's look at the economic and social implication of this announcement, especially as regards regional development. What's your thought on it?
You mean in terms of
regional development? How will this moratorium help regional development?
In fact, establishment of university is not the way to and that's the error that these politicians have. That's the mistake they make. They create an impression that until universities are established in your constituency, there's no development. That's not true. We need more industries now. Create industries. We have, an embarrassing number of unemployment currently. So if you have industries, people will go there and work. So good enough before this decision of the federal government, there is no region in this country that does not have adequate number of universities. There's no one. So the fears cannot be there. I will just give you an example of Daura. That has how many universities? I know there's a
University of Transportation.
They also have another university.
Yes, federal university.
They are trying to establish now. Already the Senate has passed this thing. So with that fear is not there. The only challenge that we have now, as Prof has also mentioned, is how you can use the resources that would have been saved from, spending it on establishment of universities and all to improve the welfare of the staff that we currently have. Now, there's something you also need to know, that as we speak, most of these universities, they rely on TED fund to build hostels, to build. So if you go to some of these universities, the number of buildings may even be almost more than the number of students, based on what the minister has said now. Because there are lots of buildings springing up here and there. Nigeria must begin to realize that education is not about buildings. You go to some universities in the UK, in the US, they are just,
neighboring
Very
countries.
big.
Let's just
Big names.
No, let's talk about where they have the quality, the names. The names. Not so big, but you see what is coming out from there.
Quality outputs.
The quality output. You see professors sitting on research fund of millions of dollars.
Yes.
But here, professors have been reduced to what is giving loan to a professor to do what? That's an embarrassment.
Yes.
Professors don't need the loan of federal government to survive. Professors only need the environment, the funding for research. And as they do that, you will see that a lot of money will. Look at Professor Katankpe. In Nigeria, Ibrahim Katankpe from Nasarawa State, one of the most renowned professors in the US. The ink that they use to write on board and all, he invented it. So at every time that they buy that ink, he gets so what does it need?
Royalties.
And thank God he's giving back to Nigeria, because he's the brain behind the Cosmopolitan University. A lot of money available because of productivity. So saying that you want to give loan like a cash transfer that you are giving to poor people and all, it's even an indictment that our professors are so poor that you need to give them loan now, so that it's psychologically, demeaning. So it shouldn't be.
That's really a sad one. But let's look forward. It's 7 years. A whole lot of things is expected within this next 7 years. We've spoken extensively about what the government should do. But the question is, what can the community do within the 7 years to make sure that, if you have the opportunity of having a university in your area, it should be productive?
You're asking me?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, you see, first you must know the kind of communities that you have. What do you expect a community in where you have Federal University of Maritime also in Delta?
Okay.
What do you want to call
Delta or Akwa Ibom?
You have in Delta.
In Delta, okay.
Yes,
Yes,
we have one
yes.
in Delta.
Exactly.
You
Yeah,
also
I
have in
Oron.
so what do you expect the community? The only thing the communities can do is to ensure that there's security. Is to ensure that they protect the universities and of course the workers, the staff, from being embarrassed. In terms of quality, it's about funding, education. Can I tell you something? The budget of Harvard, the endowment of Harvard as of 2024 is more than the budget of Nigeria. That's a university. That's why there's so much. They have funds to play with. Same thing with other universities. You can check their budgets are online for you to see. More than the budget of. So it's funding. It's about funding. It's about ensuring that your staff, they are well paid. What Nigerian professors are earning today, particularly federal university professors,
It's embarrassing.
you should not say it anywhere. It's worse than slavery.
I'll make sure you don't say it on the show this morning. But Professor, I'm calling you Professor James now. It's not making me feel like we have to increase your salary. Let's have your parting words on the way forward.
Well, we should take responsibility. The renewed hope agenda of the present administration should be all inclusive, and I think education is a major driver. Education is a major what? Driver. And when you get your education right, certainly the output is going to be there. We should work towards industrialization or making the environment industry savvy for people to come and invest. And when they come to invest, you need quality education for the right personnel to be employed. We're not going to have investors coming in here and be embarrassing us that our products are not employable. It's not good enough, and they'll be looking for expatriate from outside. So you can see that both of them are tied. But in this case, we have everything skewed to one direction. We're just establishing institutions, and the environment, industrial environment outside is not there to probably match. So there's a very, very big mismatch. So all of this put together, government should consider and let it be part of their work plan. The 7 years should not be for government to go and sleep. Then we wait for after 7 years. Then you can start coming up with your university request. No, there are works to be done. The right things, what need to be done to put all of this right. The issue of staff welfareism in such institutions, the issue of facilities and infrastructure should visit them. Equally engage ASU. ASU, most often when you see ASU go on strike, you see parents not happy. I think when I was in school, I was equally not happy with ASU at some point. That come.
But now you're happy with ASU.
I never knew I was going to be a lecturer, you know. So come, you're wasting my time. Well, I think we lost over a year or two. But I never knew I was going to be a lecturer. And here, I remember a lecturer telling me then, when we were shouting them down, no strike. And he said, if you don't allow us fight this, some of you might end up continuing to fight, take up this fight, you know. So please, let's take these things holistically and attend to them, and the country will be better for us all. Thank you.
I think now you feel pained that you fought ASU then. Well, that's fine. That's fine to go. I want to thank both of you. It's been an amazing conversation, and I've had Professor James Agajo of the Federal University of Technology, Minna, with me, and also Dr. Suleiman Barnabas. I'm not sure he wants to become a professor very soon, because he's really been hammering on the welfare of professors. But I want to thank you, esteemed gentlemen, for coming on the show this morning. Thank you so very much. And we hope when we call again, you will oblige.
Thank you.